Hey everyone, welcome back to the Onbase podcast. I am your host, Chris Moody, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Margaret Kelsey to talk about building moats in SaaS, leveraging brand and community in the age of AI. Margaret, thanks for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Love the microphone too. You got the great podcast quality, so this is going to be a good one. I can already tell. We always like to start with asking about your journey. What led you to what you're doing today?
Yeah. I depends on where you want to start. I was kind of always a creative child. I loved artistic things. In college, I lasted for one semester as an art major before I got talked into the idea that I couldn't have a career doing that. So I needed to do something business wise. So got my degree in public relations, and then had a really strange kind of beginning of my career. I was a head of marketing for like a tutoring company that we had like these big crash courses to tutor high school or to tutor college students in those like big cram session style things. And then I was a portrait photographer for this photographer that had like three different places: Costa Mesa, California, Palm Beach, Florida, and White Plains. And I would fly around and take these in-studio portraits of big important people. And then I got a job at a PR firm in South Beach, Miami, and that was awful. Candidly. And then thankfully I found my way into tech. So I just got my first job a couple years out of college at Envision, which was a design collaboration software, working remotely before remote work was cool. And at that point I was hooked. I joined as a content and community manager, not even realizing that that was a thing before I saw the job description. And from there built my career in B2B tech startups, eventually went to OpenView, which is a venture capital firm. And then I spent the last couple years on my own advising founders and their heads of marketing. And last year went in-house to one of my longest advising clients, Coderis, as their CMO.
Amazing. We have another connection we're going to have to talk about after we stop recording about Envision. So small world, as always. But I'm curious, you had some great stops. You've done some incredible things. I wanted to ask, who are the folks you took pictures of, the big people? But we won't go there. What first led you to recognize the limitations of relying on technology alone as a competitive moat, and that that's not going to be a differentiator in SaaS?
I mean, I think I started to have my brain itch around that problem without being able to verbalize it at AppQs. And so I was starting to see that in product like apps and widgets and things, it was really easy for competitors to spring up. We were competing against Intercom and some bigger players. And I started to not really understand why it wasn't a competition, like a competitive moat anymore. And then once I went to OpenView, it was much clearer to me. And even the investment analysts would write up these memos that historically had to have a section in there where you could prove a competitive moat because of the technology. And I started to just realize you can't anymore. Like, that's not where we're competing, because if a startup can build a product in a month in beta, who's to say that somebody can't then spin that up, right? So I started to think about, okay, well, with the dawn of cloud-based servers and with increasing ability, and now even with AI being able to code for you, it's really doesn't take the startup cost that it used to build a technology company, right? Like, the whole idea of why VCs would have to fund technology companies is because there's this huge, massive startup cost to actually build the technology in the first place before you could bring it to market. So you needed that injection of capital at the beginning. And now, somebody hacking away for a weekend can build something pretty, massively useful. So, it was kind of around that time of AppQs when it started to kind of get really confusing for me, and then definitely at OpenView, and when I started to see more of like the high level market landscape of being like, oh yeah, this is just not going to be a competitive advantage the way it used to be.
Okay, great. I want to pull on that thread. What is your favorite example of prioritizing brand and community and where that's had a direct impact on either growth or market position.
Yeah. So I'll use the example from the reason why I was so excited to go in-house at this company, Coderis, that I was advising. Tony, the CEO, has built the company has a completely different business model from what I've been used to in the VC-backed tech space. He's been bootstrapped and profitable for 11 years now. He built with one large customer for the first, I believe, 6 or 7 years before he started to take the technology, the platform to market and to get on additional customers. And he builds everything with and for the customers. So he started off with one large customer and said, I'll retain the IP of the technology I build. I'm going to charge you engineering services to build it. And then I'll eventually have a full suite of products that I can, bring to other customers. And he jokes that once he started getting additional customers, he was still doing the same thing. We're selling engineering services to build the products and features that they need. And he never built in product paywalls or feature flags. And so every week when he would he releases on a 7-day cadence. Codera still does. All customers would get all of the updates, even if they didn't pay for that feature or product to be built originally. And so he jokes about it as a happy accident, but I was talking to him about it yesterday where I'm like, no, it's just actually like if that was your value to extract every ounce of monetary value from everything you built, you would have prioritized building in feature flags. But you have this kind of community mindset of, well, why not just have everyone get access to all of the updates as this kind of shared community? And so when I first started advising him, and last year when I went fractional, one of the first things we did was brand the customer community called Eris. So those are our customers that are most innovative, that are, putting in the most requests for features, that are, funding it through engineering services. So now we've started to put that community together, and they're starting to have conversations about maybe there's a feature or product that a lot of them are interested in, but individually they wouldn't be able to fund themselves because of their tech budgets. So can we now start to have customers come together and co-develop something that they individually wouldn't have been able to do? And so that to me is really this true community sourced, not even just marketing and branding, but it's a community sourced moat of saying these people aren't going to go likely anywhere else if they're all banded together and talking to each other about their problems and then coming to Coderis as the technology partner to build the solutions out perfectly customized for what they need as distributors.
I love that example. To your point, I mean, you cannot replicate that. You can't just spin up and say, we're going to make
You
this.
couldn't do it in a weekend, that's for sure.
No. And AI is not going to help you, but we're going to pick on AI too. Yeah. So, okay. With the evolution of SaaS, we know that things are happening very quickly in the marketing space, especially every single day. The world changes, it seems, if you believe everything we see on LinkedIn. With generative AI in the mix and rapid innovation, how has your personal approach to defining a successful go-to-market strategy changed?
And this is funny. So the podcast that I have, Don't Say Content, we've talked about this too, but my underlying thesis for all of this is everything is changing and nothing has actually changed. Right. So if we zoom out to the idea of what is marketing actually responsible for, I think it's fundamentally responsible for two separate things. The first is, do you understand your core target audience? And do you have are you in the channels that they frequent? And do you have a message that is that resonates with them? And are you showing up frequently and consistently in those places, right? So this is awareness, affinity, brand, whatever you want to call it, but it's really about channel saturation with a message that resonates, and you kind of goal it more on how often you're showing up. The second piece is, can you identify a signal of readiness, and can you get those people to do the thing you want them to do? Can you get them into the product? Can you get them to talk to sales? If they're a customer, can you get them to make sure that they're going to renew their annual contract or whatever it is? So it's more of that conversion action mechanism. I don't think fundamentally any of that has changed, right? People still need to feel a sense of belonging. They still want to feel, like aligned to the values and of whatever they're starting to purchase or buy, or especially in a business sense, bring into their business that says something about them as an employee of who they're recommending to purchase if it's software. And so I think fundamentally, like human beings haven't changed in the way that we operate and think. There are obviously different channels all of the time. There's different tools that you can use to create the content that you're putting in these channels. Channels become saturated and undersaturated quicker than they used to, right? And then we have algorithms that then if a channel's, let's say like social media became, the feed became too saturated just because people started using it. So then we had algorithms to pull it up and the algorithms changed. Like, yes, all of those things are changing, but fundamentally human beings are still very much the same that they've always been. And so that's how I really think about it is a lot of times we get stuck in like the tactics and we hear about a new like thing that you can do or a hack or whatever. And I always try to put that where it is, which is like, if that is in service to the higher level goal, then yeah, maybe we can try it. But so many people just get stuck in this rat race of like trying all of the tactics without being like, wait, what are we actually trying to do here? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the tactics that I had an episode earlier this week, and we were talking about the days of feeling like you had to be on every single social network and you just had to be active there and
Yeah.
personally, professionally, your brand everywhere. And now it almost feels like there's one. We're just focusing on LinkedIn. So I think that's a great point. And when we think about moats, I'm curious if you could group those who have established long-term differentiation from those that are struggling to differentiate long-term, what are some of the separators where you really think this is how you sustain that long-term differentiation?
Yeah, I have a theory that really powerful brands that have that magnetic alignment, what they have is their internal cultural values. So the ones that they hire on, the ones that they promote on, the ones that they are talking all about are the same as the external brand values and are also the same as the values that your customer base also really align to, right? And so there's like this flywheel of like it has to have that through line where who you hire and who you bring into the organization have to care about the same thing as your customers care about. And to do that work and to really say, like, well, what do we care about as an organization? How are we going to bring that from people, ops, and HR all the way up to brand level marketing messaging? How do we make sure that that's actually what our customers care about? And when we get that feedback loop of listening to the community of customers, if any of those values change or something else becomes important, how do we make sure we pull that through line into the organization and then also up into marketing? And so there's a little bit of flywheel, but I really do think that that's the way that organizations can actually have a brand that has that like magnetic pull that differentiates.
Yeah, okay. We need the magnetic pull. I would say we're all bought in on brand, we're bought in on community. We know that plenty of them are generic
Mhm.
and plenty are driven by automation and we just know that this is what happens. How would you advise a company to build genuine and enduring customer connections to stand out with their brand and community?
Yeah. Well, there's a piece of that too, or if we're thinking about this as a flywheel, like what I think about too is I think about like at Envision, the marketing team really cared about design and craft and user experience in a way that like I can imagine different marketing teams that I have been on or led where we've had a different customer base. Like even right now as CMO of Coderis, distributors, yeah, there needs to be some level of design and polish to the marketing, but it does not need to be to the level of pixel perfection and user experience. One time I got an email from somebody that was so mad when I was at Envision because I had sent out this thing and it was like 2 clicks to get to the whatever it was, piece of content or whatever. And it was like a UX designer that was like, you just made me click like twice as many times and you could do it this way and I could like click less. And I took it to heart because I'm like, well, clearly this is somebody that like thinks about this all day long and had this experience where they're like, are you even, are you even designers or are you just marketers? You know what I mean? And so I really think that the more I come back to like, it's the people within the organization. And if you can have a team of people who really care and think about things the way that your customers do, it makes it easier for those people to connect with customers or to then build spaces where you're connecting customers together to create that community. But they have to feel like they belong. And my Amazon package just got here, so sorry about that. But they really have to feel like they belong, right? And the easiest way to feel like they belong is by kind of hiring some of the tribe into your marketing team.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love the word tribe too. It's such a strong word. When we think about the noise that exists in all the channels, networks, distribution platforms, everything that we use, how can a company start to creatively leverage each of those channels to amplify their brand story?
Yeah. I really don't get too bogged down with the idea of adding to the cacophony of channel saturation. Um, to me, it's like so much of it, we like will pause our own self to be like, oh, well, that channel's already so saturated. Why even try or why even post in there? And it's one of those things where it's like, I think the more that you just get over that and start to first you have to identify a channel that you know your target audience is actually in, right? I know you were saying like LinkedIn feels like the one right now. Funny enough, like, I mean, I think LinkedIn is still interesting in terms of all social channels for the job I'm in right now. But I will say, I'm in a place now where I look up, certain people that are our customers on LinkedIn and they've been with their businesses for 15, 16, 17 years. They haven't updated their LinkedIn. They're not going there every day. You know what I mean? Like, so even like, oh yeah, B2B, we should like always saturate LinkedIn. It's like, yeah, well, there's probably some places in B2B that even LinkedIn is not the right spot. But anyways, that was a little bit of a tangent. I think that the trick when you are identified a channel that you want to be in, even if it seems like it's a saturated one, is to just start experimenting, right? Because you will eventually find topics that work, styles that work, format of content that works. But you can't do it if you get stuck in that. This channel's already so saturated. I'm shouting into the void. It doesn't even matter, right? And so I think that answers your question, but I would say just like you got to just do a lot and then watch the signals. And then that's like the art and not science part of it, where it's like you just got to start experimenting and see what sticks, throwing some spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was a great call out too, because depending on your industry and your customers and your target, there are places where they may exist that has nothing to do with LinkedIn. I mean, we actually had a ton of success at Red Hat with Google Hangouts because more technical audiences were using Google in different ways than everyone else. So it was
Yeah.
never LinkedIn. It was more, in other companies, sometimes it's Reddit, sometimes it's somewhere you're not really thinking. So I do
Yeah,
think
right
that's an
now,
important point.
one of the main ERPs that we integrate with is N4, and they have a user group called Tug, and Tug has a community forum, and that's a rich place for us to monitor. We obviously don't post like salesy stuff in there, but we're monitoring what people are asking about. We're monitoring which of our customers are popping onto those threads and talking about us. Like, it's like, and that would never show up on like I would never write a LinkedIn post about here's how to, think about the Tug user forum for B2B marketing, right? So I think that that's one of these interesting things if we attach it back up to like why marketing feels so chaotic right now is that in order to like be an influencer, like thought leader on LinkedIn, you have to post something that's like generic enough that it helps like more than just your niche situation. But the way that really smart marketers are winning right now are kind of ignoring that and only going into like the niche thing that works for their business, right? Rather than like, oh, what you need to do is, five like tricks to like, I don't know. It's all that kind of content that like we get wrapped up in, and I'm like, oh, that FOMO of like I need to be doing that, rather than like, yeah, do the unique specific thing that's going to work for your customers.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I think we all feel that scrolling through LinkedIn, because sometimes the definition of success isn't always clear, and we may want the vanity metrics, and we don't even need those. It's just, hey, let's get the right audience. All right,
Yeah.
I'm going to paint a picture for you. This is going to pull on some of the art background and working for a heavily design driven organization like Envision. Let's imagine we work at a company that doesn't have an infinite budget. I know this is a big stretch. Okay. They no infinite budget, resource constrained, little overwhelmed. Not everyone understands the value of a true community and that strong user group, which you just hit on in 4. That's a great one. What would be your first actionable step you would take in an organization like that to create a stronger community presence?
That's a great question. I think the easiest thing to do would be to go in, look at the customer base that you already have, work with whether it's customer success or sales reps or whoever, identify the ones that have leaned in the most. And I think what I would do is try to set up some kind of like either virtual, or if your customers happen to be co-located in the place that you are, depending on your company, set up either like a virtual or a in-person like lunch and learn, or like chatting session. Because I think what you need to do is you need to get folks internally, when we were talking about that flywheel of like internal cultural values to external brand values to community, you need to get your folks internally bought in and listening to customers and understanding who they are. I mean, how many marketers do you know that are at a company that have never talked to a customer?
Lots.
It's a lot, right? So this idea of like, if you want to get buy-in through the company, that community is helpful. I think the first thing to do is to try to bring some of the most engaged, happy customers into the organization in some sort of way. So not just marketers, but everyone can start listening to the challenges that they're having, the places that they show up. And it could even just be like a little kind of casual interview session of like, hey, what do you listen to on the way to work in the morning if you have a commute, right? Like, where do you find out your information about the industry that you're in, right? Like, where do you, how do you relax? What do you like? Is there a kind of brand of backpack or cool shoes that you're super into these days? Like, that might inform swag, right? That might inform what channels you're going to start thinking about. But like bringing those people in, having a conversation, getting your organization to be able to see these people and talk to them and realize they're just human beings like the rest of us. I think that would be a first step. I think it would be really cool to do it if you have a couple customers together so then they can meet each other, and then it can be like, I often think about this idea that like you can inherit the credibility of like bringing people together. Like, how many times are like the matchmaker of the person at the wedding gets a shout out by the couple for like introducing them in the beginning? What did they do, right? They brought two people together, and then all of a sudden they're like a really important person in those people's lives. And so I think about that oftentimes as like, how do we inherit the credibility of forming connections, not just like from me as a business to the customer and us having that connection, but how do we get the benefit of getting these two customers to talk to each other, and maybe they become friends, maybe they're having calls outside of the like broader customer community calls and catching up and talking about, challenges and whatnot. Like, your brand will inherently have that credibility, or get the benefit of making that connection too.
Yeah, that's incredible advice. My first big presentation on a stage was called Everyone Needs a Dumb Guy. And it was someone, I'm using air quotes for those who are just listening. It was someone dumb enough to listen and not propose solutions and just go around and really get that voice of the customer and bring that back. So I think that's huge. Let's pull on the credibility thread. I'm really curious what advice you have to help folks integrate generative AI and all the new tools that we have that may support our brand strategy, but making sure we don't compromise authenticity or trust?
Yeah. The thing that I think has been the most useful for me is, and we're working internally too at Coderis to be able to pull this. We've started creating so much content, and we have video content and product content because, as you can imagine, if Tony was building and Tony and the team was building products for, let's say, I'll say 9 years before they started creating product content. So there's a backlog of features and products that we're working through right now, and creating videos and things like that. But then that becomes a huge data resource that doesn't get muddied up by like the public LLMs that are going to pull in, what are the features, what are the benefits of a CRM versus if we can use the generative AI to pull from our product content and the things that we've created or the demos or the sales calls or the customer calls that we've had, then it becomes much more authentic and aligned to not only the actual features and benefits for our target audience, but also the problems and the language that they use when they're describing those things. So we're working on that right now, but we obviously want to be really sensitive about our own data and not feeding it into a public LLM that's then going to be trained on it and using it elsewhere. So that's how I've been thinking about it, is like these like micro sets of confidential and proprietary data lakes that then you can use generative AI to pull out of, to me feels more interesting than just using ChatGPT to write a blog post or marketing webpage or whatever.
Love it. All right, we're coming up on time. I know we have a ton of meetings, so we're going to go into the lightning round. The first one, you can only pick one thing. What do you think is the single biggest challenge in B2B sales?
Sales. I would say specifically for B2B companies that are selling to VC-backed B2B companies, it's budget.
Love it. All right, awesome. Favorite tools or technology? So anything that you'd recommend?
Well, we're in Riverside right now. Love it. Been using it so much lately. Yeah, I'll go with Riverside.
All right, awesome. Good reads. Any books, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts that you recommend?
I just started Mel Robbins' Let Them Theory.
That's a good one. I've seen that one
I would
pop
say
up a
also
bunch.
like Radical Candor is the one that I always go back to, of like totally changed my working life and personal life when I read Radical Candor. So it's an oldie but a goodie.
Yes, I'm a big fan of that, which, folks are not privy to our conversation before we hit record, but I think it certainly fits in the radical candor category.
Yeah.
What about people? Who inspires you in the B2B space?
My friend Kristen Hillary that I met at Envision, I think she is, well, I would say her and Andy Orso, they're both Envisioners that I have a Slack channel with them that we, stay in touch throughout our post Envision lives. I think both of them are the most hysterical, wacky, creative marketers that I've ever met in my entire life. They're not afraid to have off the wall ideas that somehow land perfectly with their target audience. Very creative, multidisciplinary, they like each have like a rich life outside of their work that then also gives them the creative energy to feed that back in. So those are two that I've just always looked up to just be like, wow, if I could be a half an ounce closer to being how creative they are, I could really, really be amazing.
That may have been the best recommendation of any person I've heard on a podcast episode. So
Cool.
kudos to those two. We will definitely connect with them.
Yep.
And then the most important question of all, Margaret, how can everyone get in touch with you after this episode?
Yeah, I'm active on LinkedIn. I say that. I've been in a little bit of a hibernation phase since the beginning of the year. I think like winter, I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. So like winter has put me in hibernation mode. But I do check my LinkedIn often. Don't be afraid to double message me if I somehow don't answer your first one. I won't say I'm the best at staying on top of LinkedIn. So if you really want to talk to me, don't be afraid to double message me. But I think LinkedIn is probably the best way. I have a couple well, margaretkelsey.com will also bring you to my art website and my other stuff that I have going on. So that's kind of the best, probably other spot to figure out what's going on in my brain.
Outstanding. And look, opportunity to plug your podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, we have Don't Say content. It's most weeks. Sometimes we'll take a little break in between seasons, but Tuesdays we launch new episodes. And Devin Bramhall and I just talk about all the things that we think are good and wrong and confusing about marketing. And usually there's like a broader life lesson in there. And the broader life lesson of even why it's called Don't Say content is so much of the confusion and the chaos that's happening in our lives and careers right now is that we don't take the time to ask about to make sure that the words that we're using really mean the same things to both of us. So I've seen it with founders and heads of marketing where, they say demand gen or they say, content strategy, and they're talking about two different things and they talk back like cross each other for months on end and don't understand why they can't figure it out. So that would be my advice is to be, to your point, the dumb guy in the room to say, wait a second, let me ask a couple more questions. What are we really trying to do? What are we really trying to say right now?
Awesome. Well, look, I really appreciate your time. It was awesome. Thanks for joining us today.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.